So as some of you might know, in the last couple of months, I've been playing the Elder Scrolls games. And already in the first hour of playing the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, the first game that I played in the Elder Scrolls franchise, I was blown away by one specific aspect. And obviously we all love the open worlds of the games, or the soundtracks of them, but can we please talk about the lore of the games? And I wasn't sure if I was going to make this video after playing Morrowind, but I'm halfway through Oblivion and I'm seriously so impressed by how deep the lore is of the Elder Scrolls games, and I would like other developers to take notes. When I sometimes scroll through YouTube or subreddits surrounding the Elder Scrolls games, you sometimes see those memes that kind of emphasize on how deep the lore of the games is. And even when I was starting Morrowind, I was very impressed even when it came to creating your own character, on how detailed the game was when it came to that aspect. But what I started to find more and more impressive is the crazy amount of thought that came into creating this world. And when it comes to the Elder Scrolls, I feel like the fan base kind of treats it like a religion, I've heard people having discussions about events that didn't even happen in the game, events that you could read in books in the games. I'm so blown away by that fact that it's so huge and so deeply detailed. And a great aspect that I think that makes it even more impressive is that the Elder Scrolls games take every perspective into account. So for you to understand, when you play most games or when you watch movies, everything seems to be black and white, There are the good guys, there are the bad guys. Everything is clear, there aren't really a lot of layers portrayed to the characters and to the events that happened in the games. But what the Elder Scrolls games do is they literally tell you different perspectives from one event. So there were several quests in the games that I started and I was going into it thinking like, okay, that's the bad guy and that's the good guy. For example, let's say a thief was stealing things and the guy that he was stealing from hired me to kill him. In most games what you do is you find out where he is, you kill him, you go back, you collect the reward. In the Elder Scrolls games, after finding him, he literally started talking for about 5 minutes about a huge backstory that we didn't even notice in the first place. He was starting to tell me about the character that hired me and what he actually does and how he became so rich in the first place. And after listening to him, you yourself decide who you're going to side with. You didn't only hear one perspective, you heard both perspectives, and you can decide who or if any one of them is right. And when it comes to the lore of the Elder Scrolls, it really reminds me of the Lord of the Rings. And Bethesda talked about how big of an inspiration the Lord of the Rings was. And that's a great thing for me, because the Lord of the Rings films are my favorite movies. And it's the same there, you have so many backstories. And when you read the books, like you read the Lord of the Rings, then you read The Hobbit, then you realize that there are even more books, like the Silmarillion for example, that go even deeper into the lore. And it's the same thing when it comes to the Elder Scrolls. Like while playing, I was reading things that happened hundreds of years ago, so they're not even important for the games. However, they're more detailed than most modern games. And in the games there are so many layers and so many different stories, and the more I play the games, I figure out more and more that I don't know shit about the game's lore. And that, in my opinion, really shows how passionate the developers were about their games. The Elder Scrolls world and history was not just their job, you just know that they were thinking about it in the evenings, writing stories about them and putting them into the games, because as I said, they're not just some blunt, boring stories. It is a complete thought through history, so with so many different and distant events that aren't important for the game at all. Like if you read them or not, it won't have an impact on your character. It's just way more easy to immerse yourself into a game when you have such an incredible backstory, when you yourself think and read about those stories that happened in the world. And as I already talked about in my video where I talk about the freedom that the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind gives, you could literally spend dozens, even hundreds of hours just doing side quests, learning about the open world and about the NPCs and the history of the games without even completing one main quest. And I think that's also a big aspect on why the Elder Scrolls franchise is as successful as it is. Just this incredible amount of rich history that it has. I have not played, to this day, I have not played a game that goes deeper when it comes to the history and the lore of the game. Even The Witcher, even though it has 7 books that you could read about, even when it comes to that game, and that hurts because it is my favorite game, but even that game doesn't have a lore as detailed and as deep as the Elder Scrolls. And the more I play those games, I knew that I was going to have to make this video just to point that great aspect out, because that's completely new in my opinion. You know, there are other games, even The Witcher does a good job when it comes to the lore, or Red Dead Redemption is also very detailed when it comes to the backstory. But the lore of the Elder Scrolls, like sometimes I was reading it and I was thinking like, are you kidding me? Did the author of The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, rise from the dead and they put him there to write those stories? Like, I was literally so impressed on how great and detailed the lore of the game actually is. And after now spending around 70 hours in those 2 games, Morrowind and Oblivion, I notice more and more that those games are not for the casual gamer. They are not for guys that just sit down in the evening and want to play video games for half an hour. When you start to play those games, it will literally become a part of your life. You will literally start to think about the backstory, you will start to think about the characters you meet and the history of the open world, even when you don't play the game. And now I want to hear about your opinions on the topic. Do you see it the same way as I do, and did it also overwhelm you as much while playing the games? Because I, to be honest, didn't expect that at all, and it's just really refreshing to see that some developers are so passionate about their games like Bethesda is. As I said, write your opinion and your perspective down in the comments, and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss videos surrounding videos about open world games like the Elder Scrolls. Alright guys, that was it from me in today's video. I wish you all an amazing day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.